Okay, everyone, welcome to our Parents and Youth Evening. It's good to see a few of you on here already. And first of all, I think we're very grateful for Ashia for joining us today, having an Olympic athlete and world record holder on the Parents and Youth Evening. I have to say, it's an honour for us as a club to have you here. And I think, a big part of today is some of the youngsters learning from you, really, about some of the things that you went through growing up as an athlete and then as an athlete at the sort of highest level. So I guess my first question is, how did you get into athletics or sport in general?
Oh my goodness. I've always been involved in sport from probably before the age of 9. But what I really remember was when I was at junior school, I'd probably only been there a few months. And every year the school had a massive school race. So, the girls would race against the girls. And the boys would race against the boys. And we all sort of lined up, in a big, massive field in the middle of nowhere. It felt like the middle of nowhere. It probably wasn't. And we'd all race, and everybody knew that I was fairly quick. And so they put me next to the fastest girl in the school. And obviously the gun went. And as I went to take my leg over the line, I literally tripped up the fastest girl in the school. Ran halfway down thinking, oh, she should be beating me. I literally stopped in the middle of the field, turned around, saw all the girls kind of running towards me, turned back round and finished the race, won it. But then at the end of the race, I was told, I cheated because I tripped up the girl next to me. The race was rerun. I won the race. And my prize for winning that race was to be taken down to local track. And that's how it all began for me.
And when you won that race, did the teachers automatically think, you know what, we think she's got a talent here? Or was it a case of just them taking you to the track to go and see what they thought of you?
I think it was probably the teacher thinking, they've got a bit of talent here.
Yeah.
Let's do something with her. And it was actually, it was a PE teacher, and he did actually do a little bit of coaching with me. So, I mean, literally every sport that there was, I took part in. I did not just athletics. I used to do team sports. I used to do cricket. I used to play football, basketball, netball, you name it, I did it. I swam as well for the school. So
So what was it about athletics then that really focused your attention compared to, say, swimming?
I did everything. I just loved athletics.
Here we go, Roger. It's on.
Guys, can you mute yourselves, please?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, Asha.
That's all right. I just loved athletics. I think because within athletics there was other things I could have a go at, and it was cheap as well. So you didn't, I could just get a pair of trainers on, some shorts on, and head to the track. It wasn't, I didn't need a pair of spikes or anything like that. I literally could just turn up and be coached for free. That's how it was back then. Obviously, you had to pay, to join the club, but it was relatively small at that time.
It's interesting because I think it was maybe the last World Championship or something. I heard one of the commentators saying that athletics is probably the most competitive sport in the world because of the accessibility. Like what you just said, it's cheap. It doesn't cost people hardly anything to just be able to go out and run.
Yeah.
So did you find that?
Oh.
Let me just. Yeah, I mean, did you find that it was really competitive, even from
really competitive? There were other kids that were so much better than me, but I don't know what happened to them. To be honest, they kind of just stopped going. And for me, because obviously I had some talent, but not as, I mean, I've seen better talent than I had when I was sort of growing up and stuff, but they didn't carry on in the sport, and I just persevered. And I think that's why I managed to come through and find the right coaches along the way who suited my style of training, my style of technique, you know, and I think that's why I managed to come through and a lot of others didn't.
So what would you say, consistency was obviously a big part of it, you know, carrying on with it, because a lot of kids do you know, fall by the wayside, maybe because other things take over in their lives, whether it be school work, you know, just growing up, hanging out with your mates, doing other stuff. So was it just because you loved it so much, or was it because someone was pushing you? What kept you consistent all those
you know, my parents didn't really have any interest in athletics.
Yeah.
They just, well, if it keeps her out of the streets, that's fine by us. You know, I had friends and stuff outside of athletics or outside the sport. I think, just move that up. I think I just, I also had friends within the sport. So I'd made quite a lot of friends within the club. You know, they used to hold sort of Christmas dues at the end of every year, which we'd always did have like a Christmas disco, which was actually quite nice because the whole club used to sort of join in, and you get to know other people. I used to train in a group with a group of people as well, who also became my friends. And I think that helped me to stay within the sport. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, we even see in our club that having a group of friends that you play with makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, what were some of the habits that you formed or had to develop as you were kind of growing up?
Do you know, this thing, when I look back now, you know, I had probably 1, 2, 3, I had 4 or 5 different coaches over the years. I stayed with coaches for as far as they could take me. It sounds selfish, but I think with sport, you have to be kind of selfish. And I was always striving to be better, to do better. And once I felt that a coach could only take me so far, I would literally move on to the next best, or who I thought was the better coach, and try and move on from there. Which eventually, it kind of moved me around sort of the country a little bit. So I went from Essex to London, and then London to Birmingham, following the best, or what I thought would be the best coach. Yeah. And he was the best coach for me.
What do you think made a good coach for you at that time?
Someone who's prepared to listen, not just tell you what to do and then you go and do it. Will actually listen to the input that you give them, because after all, you do know your body enough to be able to have some sort of input into your coaching. I mean, I was quite fortunate that I found Aston Moore, who was my last coach, and you know, I mean, obviously he would devise all the training for myself, but I would have some sort of input. We would experiment as well, and he was actually able to listen to what I had to say. I'd say, well, why don't we try this? And he'd go, I'm not sure, but we'll give it a go anyway. We'll give it a go for 1 month, 1 cycle. So I had sort of 3-week cycles, and see how it goes and see if there's any improvement. If it didn't improve, then we'd go back to the drawing board. So we're always experimenting, always trying new things, always trying to spy on other people, see what they were doing, how they were so good at certain elements of training, and how I could become that way as well.
So it's interesting because what you're trying to say is that it's important for, as an athlete, to go back to your coach and maybe feedback what you think's working as well as
definitely.
telling you what works and what doesn't work based on their experience.
Yeah, don't always do the easiest things. You got to do the stuff that you're really rubbish at as well. They're the things that you really must work on, not the stuff that you're good at.
What were the things that you struggled with that you really had to work on?
Oh my goodness. So the things that I would struggle with was anything from standing, so static stuff. But I became really good at them because obviously I had to practice. And then obviously the longer distance stuff. So you can imagine, even though you think that, oh, you know, I only run sort of 20 to 30 meters down the runway, I still had to do long runs. You know, I still had to go for my 30 to 40 minute runs a couple of times a week. I still had to run anywhere sort of from 200 to 600 meter runs. I mean, 600 meter runs used to make me literally throw up. They were so bad before I'd even started, because I just knew that I would be in quite a lot of discomfort. But it kind of made me the athlete, you know, it made me tougher. So it toughened me up. So it wasn't just about sort of trying to get fit in that way. It was also a mental toughness that you had to build. So it's not just about training physically, it's about training mentally as well.
No, definitely. I've got a couple of questions come through, but I've got one before that. I mean, what were, especially as a youngster, some of the sacrifices that you made to get to that elite level? Because there must have been times where your mates who didn't have any involvement in athletics said, oh, we're going to this party, or we're going out, or, you know, do you want to come around ours and watch some TV, whatever it might have been. I mean, what were some of the sacrifices you remember?
I think the sacrifices that I remember specifically would be at the point where I was training full time. So I literally lived, breathed, slept, ate athletics, triple jump, and my routine when I was really in the midst of it was training anywhere from 5 to 6 days a week. 4 to 5 of those days were training twice a day. So I'd literally go to a track in the morning, train, come home, have something to eat, have a little sleep, go back in the evening, come back, go to bed. It was literally like that. But that was at the top of my game. And for me, I didn't feel like I was sacrificing anything, because it was always going to be there. And if your friends were your friends, they'd understand, you know, that it's a very short-lived career. So you've got to make the most of it as best as you can. Your friends will always be there no matter what, you know, but your athletics won't, or your sport won't, because we all get old, you know.
No, definitely. And, you know, what were some of the like key aspects of maintaining the elite level for a sustained period of time?
I suppose it was trying to stay injury free as much as possible, but I was the kind of athlete where I took risks because I felt I had to, you know, in order to push the sport on, to push myself on. And my, probably not the best mentality, but my mentality at the time, well, you know, if it breaks, it can always be fixed. You get to a point, you know, I think it was probably age as well, that sometimes when it breaks, yes, it can be fixed, but not in the way that you expect it to. So that's, you know, hindsight's a great thing.
and obviously to protect your body from injury, there must have been some sort of routine that you had with that, whether it be what you ate or whether it be stretching or whatever it might have been.
A lot of conditioning work had to be done. So I had to do a lot of tiny, small exercises to strengthen my toes, because I did actually fracture 4 of my toes one particular season. Strengthen my feet, strengthen my knees, strengthen my, you know, my quads. So doing ankle exercises, doing hand exercises, sorry, so that, you know, when I was weightlifting, because I was literally weightlifting every single day, you know, so you have to maintain these tiny little exercises through band work and stuff like that, you know, to keep everything supple. I used to have massages every other day just so I could get on the track and just keep going, you know. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the hours that you must have had to put into those little bits of exercise, doing the band work and things like that, sometimes people think that's a bit boring and laborious. It's not
It is, yes.
the sexy stuff like, you know, the hockey players it's not playing hockey on a pitch, it's the stuff that you do outside that keeps your body going, and like you said, keeps you at that, maintain the elite level and injury free as well.
Yeah, I mean, Aston was really good because I do all my training and then he would literally set aside. So he'd do the training plan and I'd follow it to the T, and then he'd set aside some intrinsic exercises, he'd call them. And I would literally have to do that before I went home. So it was probably, you know, it's like you're dying to get home just to have something to eat and a little bit of a sleep ready for the evening session. But, you know, I had to stop sort of for half an hour to 45 minutes doing these small exercises, or I would do it as part of my warm-up so that I didn't have to do it after the session and things like that. So you try and manage it as much as you can. It's hard, but it's well worth it. It really is.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of this stuff happened when you became a full-time athlete, but I read somewhere you didn't actually become a full-time athlete when you had the chance for 7 years. Is that right?
I couldn't afford it.
Right.
To you know, to put it bluntly, I worked up until, let me see, so I even went to the Olympics and I was still working in a pretty much it was a part-time job. So I was sponsored by the company down in London, and it wasn't until after the Olympics that I made the decision to finish work completely, even though I had sponsorships, but it wasn't really enough to sort of live from. And we had the lottery as well. So with that added together and, you know, a couple of other things that I managed to put together, I was able to do it. But it was tough. It was really tough because, you know, it's not like you could buy a house with the money or anything like that. It was literally, you live as menially as you can, but still able to train. And obviously, the better you get, the more money you get. You know, so that's how it works. So you know, it kind of, nowadays when I see people sort of trying to go into full-time sport, whatever that may be, it does sort of worry me a little bit, because I'm wondering how they do it. I really do, because obviously I really struggled, and a lot of other athletes struggled. A lot of athletes work and put in the training and compete, you know, and still managed to do really well in the sport. You know, it's not, you don't have to be necessarily a full-time athlete from the off to make it in the sport. You can still make it without necessarily being a full-time athlete.
And I guess it's a really difficult decision, isn't it? I mean, it's not one that I've had to.
It's a risk.
I've never been that good, but you know, when for example, some of the juniors who might be getting into the England ranks with in the hockey system, for example, there's a point where if you want to play in the Olympic squad, you'll get some money from England Hockey and Sport England and a lottery, but it's not going to make you millions.
No.
And you've got to remember that's a 4-year block.
Yeah.
You're focusing on for the next Olympic cycle.
Yeah.
I mean, what advice would you give to people in that situation?
Don't give up your job, because it's a big risk. You know, I like taking risks. I literally lost sleep thinking, am I good enough to go full time? Before I went full time, I just didn't make that decision very lightly. I knew what it entailed, and I also knew it was a risk I might not actually make it. I mean, fortunately I did. I could have got injured. I did get injured, and you just sort of survive and claw your way through it as much as you can. I mean, I was also quite lucky that, you know, I had a partner who at the time, who, you know, had to sort of help me out a few times, but eventually I managed to sort of go it alone, you know, without any help whatsoever. But it's a big risk, you know. Just ask questions, ask people, literally, am I good enough to go full time? Would you recommend that I go into full time into the sport? You know, don't just do it as a knee-jerk reaction. Have a good look and be critical of yourself. You know, just, I don't know, it's hard to describe. You got to literally take yourself out of your body and look at yourself on the other side, and look at yourself and see, and be critical enough to say, am I good enough to do this on a full-time basis? Because it's hard work. You know, your training will change dramatically as soon as you go into full-time sport. It doesn't, you know, sort of, you know, at the minute you probably might be just training once a day. You've now got to train twice a day. Can you do that for a long period of time? I did it for, you know, years, and it was hard. Believe me, it was hard. Are you willing to sacrifice all these things that you do, you know, on the side at home? Are you willing to sacrifice pretty much your friends and going out and, you know, partying? When they've got a party, you've got to train. Can you go and train rather than party? You know, can you do all these things?
But I think one thing I'd say is that no one can ever take away from you that you've been to the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And you know, no amount of money could buy that.
No.
That must play on your mind as well. Like, you must think to yourself, you know what, I went to the Olympics. Come on, I would have. You know, I don't think. I mean, I'm just looking at it from an outside perspective. Could any money that you might have earned, you know, in a full-time job ever replace that?
No. Olympics is awesome. You know, you're put in a village with thousands of athletes. It feels like thousands, and you feel it's an immense feeling, and you feel minute. It's a really weird feeling. You've got so many class athletes all mixing together. It's absolutely fantastic. Plus you get, you know, a free trip to watch a few of the other sports as well, which is absolutely fabulous. You know, stuff that you wouldn't normally see on TV. You actually, you know, go there and you can actually sit there and watch it. It's brilliant. Yeah.
I can imagine. And I mean, I've got a few questions. I'm going to go through some of those. Satpal, who's our youth coach, has asked, what's your advice for youngsters when they're going through a dip in confidence and or performance? Could you please share your experiences to that?
Oh my goodness, a dip in performance.
Or confidence.
Or confidence. I've been through that. I haven't always been good. I used to sort of go to competitions and literally fail, you know, with either 3 no jumps or just my head completely going. And it's literally, you have to sit down and talk to your coach. They're the ones who will understand where, you know, where you're coming from. If you don't talk to anyone, they're not going to know what you're going through. It's so important to at least talk to your coach. Your coach is there to help you through not just your training, but mental aspects as well.
And talking about that mental aspect, I've got a question about mental strength here. How do you develop that? And secondly, you know, I've read that, for example, Michael Phelps, what he used to do was visualize every single stroke in the pool.
Yep.
Before any sort of race. And he visualized that so much. So when he went in the pool, it was just second nature to him. So I guess to some extent, triple jump, it's you know exactly what you're going to be doing beforehand, don't you? Or you think you do. And mentally imagine that, and then it just happens when you go on the track, or does everything change as soon as you walk into the Olympic arena?
No, I spent a lot of time visualizing. I got taught how to do it by a sports psychologist, because I didn't know how to do it. obviously I'd have sort of flashes of being able to do bits of it, but I could literally, so I'd be practicing weeks in advance. So it wouldn't be just a few days before competition. It'd be weeks, months, years before, where I'd literally visualize every part of the runway, all the way down to the hop, step, and the jump. You know, I knew exactly where I had to pick up speed. I knew exactly where I should be taking off. You'd always visualize your best jump. And then when I got to the competition, I could actually visualize and jump at the same time. So what I was trying to do was literally mimic everything I was visualizing at the same time. It's hard to explain, but that's I think that's what made me who I was. So I'd always try and visualize that perfect jump, and I'd always try and copy that perfect jump as well.
So when you said, for example, you had the 3 no's,
Yeah.
what was it that would have gone wrong there?
Probably wasn't visualizing at all. All my best jumps, even when I broke the world record, I know that I was visualizing pretty much at the same time. I mean, when I broke the world record, it was really weird because everything happened in slow motion. So I was running down the runway and I saw Debbie Marty to my right hand side getting ready for the high jump, and I could see other people doing other things on in the field. And I just literally, I knew exactly what I was going to do. When I got to the board, I hit the board, and then it suddenly went into normal speed. It was just it was surreal.
Did you know that you'd done broken the world record as soon as you did?
Yeah, I knew it was far. Because you kind of hang in the air a little bit, so you tend to float just that little bit longer than normal. So I knew when I landed in the pit, I was there for a long time in the air, longer than I normally am. So I knew.
And what was that feeling when the realization came that you'd actually broken the world record?
Awesome. It was really good. Yeah, literally got out the pit backwards, walked out backwards and looked at it with my hands up in the air already. Yeah.
And what would you say? I mean, did you think you had it in the bag beforehand because you'd done it in practice before, or was it just that day?
You've never got it in the bag until the last round, until it's official. I know so many people have made that mistake, think they've got it in the bag, in round 4, but you get to round 6 and somebody comes sort of from nowhere. And I've seen that happen so many times and win it on the last round under pressure. So it's never in the bag until the competition is finished.
How did you prepare for on before race day and on race day?
So we used to work backwards. So we'd go, okay, we want to compete here, here, and here. So now we start working backwards on the training. So a week before the competition, I probably won't hardly train. I probably might just go down to the track and, warm up, stretch, do some strides, which is almost sprinting, but not quite. Might lift a couple of times. And then we start working backwards from there, right down to winter training, which consists of a 6-week cycle, which is nasty. So you're training literally non-stop for 6 weeks. And then you have a week's downtime. You're not completely resting. And then you start doing your 3 to 4 week cycles of weightlifting, plyometrics, which is jumping, sprinting, or it starts out at 600s, then it goes down to maybe 300s or 400s, then 2s, and you breathe a sigh of relief when it's 100s and 60s, and you just sharpen up as the competition becomes closer and closer. You just sharpen up as much as you can, and then you'll have a number of competitions leading to the main competition, and what you're trying to do is peak for the main competition. So I will compete maybe 4 or 5 times in the run up to a major championship, and then the major championships I probably won't hardly train in probably the week to 10 days prior to the competition. I will literally lift extremely it'll be maximum lifts of 1s, 2s and 3s, maybe 2 or 3 times in the run up to the actual major competition.
When you say lift, you mean weightlift or jumps?
Weightlift and literally sprint maybe 20, 30 meters to try and sharpen the body up as much as possible. And obviously on top of that, I will have dieted down to a certain weight as well, to make sure I'm as light as possible, but I haven't lost too much weight where I can't actually shift myself down the wrong way.
Yeah, because we've got a question here. What's your favourite junk food? I mean, you must have lots of temptations of junk food as your...
Oh God, my favourite junk food. Didn't have Nando's back then, but we have Nando's now. So I would say back then would have been maybe Kentucky.
Yeah.
Kentucky or Burger King. Burger King was my undoing one year. I actually put on that much weight.
So what was your athlete's diet then?
My athlete's diet was pretty high protein diet. Didn't eat a lot of carbs. Didn't really need it. My carbs came from vegetables. I was old school. So lots of chicken, lots of fish, lots of vegetables, salads, fruits, and not a lot of carbs. If I was eating carbs, it would be veg and it would be rice, not a lot else. Yeah.
And then let's go back to the actual day of the race or the day of the competition. Would you have a certain breakfast? Would you have a certain routine in the morning? Would you listen to a favourite song?
Oh God. Yeah, I didn't really listen to music. I've tried that, didn't really work for me. I like listening to everything that's going on around me. I like taking it all in, whether someone's yapping away in the background, I like to take the whole lot in. I'm nosy, I am as well. Food wise, I always tried to eat. It was hard. I tried to eat, but I was always really nervous, but I'd always force myself to eat something because I was out there because there were that many athletes competing. You could be out there for sort of competition might start at 8:30, 8 to 8:30 in the morning. So you really needed to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning. This is what happened at the Olympics in Atlanta. I think the qualifiers were at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I needed to be up by 4 a.m. And I mean, it wouldn't happen now, but the actual food hall was closed. They didn't have any breakfast. All they had was dinner from what they'd been cooking, because the food hall was open 24 hours a day. So you could always get food no matter what time of the day it was. And all they had was steak. And that's what I had for, for my breakfast at the Olympics. It worked because I qualified.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess people have an assumption sometimes looking from the outside that if you're an Olympic athlete, it's going to be all glamorous and you're going to be in some nice fancy changing rooms and all the rest of it.
There's no glamour in the Olympics.
But I can imagine there's like a lot of waiting around, a lot of protocol.
Oh God, yeah.
So I bet it's quite strict.
It is very strict. Your coach is not allowed in the holding area. Once you're in the holding area, you can't come out of there. You can only wear whatever. So it's so strict. So the volunteers that are there, they have photos of what your kit should look like. And if your kit does not match what they have in the photos, it's coming off. You are not allowed music in the holding area. They will confiscate that from you because you could be deemed to be getting extra coaching. Once you're in the actual Olympic you're actually in the stadium. You're not allowed to just walk off and go and talk to your coach. You have to stay within the area that you're jumping in. So you just, you know, you hope you can lip read your coach on the other side of the track, you know. But it is so strict. There's nothing glamorous, but it is immense when you're out there, though. It's amazing when you're out there. So I'm not trying to put people off or anything.
I've got another question here. It's about technology and analytics and things, how things have probably moved on maybe in the last 10, 15 years. Would you say that would have changed you as an athlete in any way if you'd have been an athlete in, say, the last 5, or even a current athlete in the cycle?
Yeah, I mean, we had our own analytics and things like that. So we would, so the I suppose it wasn't Sport England, it was UK Athletics at the time. They would get the top ranking jumpers, get them together. We'd go to Liverpool University and we would be tested. So we would have our body mass tested, how much fat we were carrying, how much muscle we were carrying, and then we were strength tested. We were jumps tested, so from standing jump, how far could we jump, how far could we jump with the small runway, 3-stride approach, 10-stride approach, and they would take all those results and then feed back to us later on, and then we'd have like a strength. I think it was called the Lido testing machine. I'm not sure if it still exists, where you'd sit in this machine and you'd have to do a certain amount of exercises. So it might be leg extensions. So you'd have to do it, see how strong you could push the bar with your leg, and then how quickly you could do it without too much lactic being built up in your legs, and things like that. So we had stuff like that to see, and then we'd go back every year to see if there were any improvements. So we did have those kind of things, and I don't think it's changed so much even now. It might have changed a little bit, but not that much. You know, things do move on, but not drastically, if you like. Yeah.
I mean, do you keep in touch with many young athletes nowadays who are going through the program?
No, unfortunately, I don't. I've literally left the sport completely. I do my own thing. I have my own business and things like that. I still train, but and I still pop down to the track at Alexander Stadium every now and again to say hi to everybody. But other than that, no. I was coaching after my retirement, and then I fell pregnant, and then sort of had children and didn't really go back into the sport. Yeah.
Fair enough. I've got another question here. What's the difference between competing at a domestic and level and an international level?
Oh, massive. It is quite large. I mean, domestic level, you are literally competing. If you want to, you're competing against a small crowd. You're also competing against people that maybe not be on the same level as you, maybe not quite as good as you. So it sounds horrible, but it doesn't always fire you up. But when you're on an international level, you've got to bring some game, because there's somebody will beat you. Whereas on a unless you've got 1 or 2 or 3 people that are as good as you on the sort of on the British stage, you're always going to have to fight for it. But on an international stage, it's a whole different ball game. You literally have to bring your best game. You can't sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't take it easy. Yeah. You really can't. And I've done that. I've gone international thinking, yeah, I'll be all right here. And then someone's just come out of nowhere and you think, what? What happened?
And did you have a good relationship with the other athletes in your field or not? Or was it just like very business-like?
It was very professional.
Yeah.
A lot of them didn't speak English. or English that well. So it was, you know, obviously I'd always congratulate them and they'd always congratulate me. But it was just very, very professional. I mean, you're talking about girls. Girls are not the friendliest when it comes to competition. They're not like boys.
And
You
do
know,
you
I mean,
feel like there were different mentalities between the different nations in terms of, I don't know, maybe just their approach to game day or whatever it might have been, the way they interacted with their fellow athletes or anything?
oh yeah, game day was a whole different ball game because nobody talked to anybody, and the Russians were probably the worst. I had somebody actually move my marker, and I realised after the first round that somebody had moved my marker because I literally did the biggest no jump ever, and I was thinking, something's not right. So I had to quickly rush and recount my runway. So you'll get people like that. People are not nice. You know, I wouldn't dream of doing that to somebody else, no matter how good they or how much better than they are at jumping than me. For me, it's like, well, we're here, so you know, let's get it on, kind of thing. So I don't. It was hard for me to understand why somebody would do that to my runway, if you like. It's very easy to just kick it slightly with if you think no one's looking, because you know. So I ended up having to use tape, make sure the tape was down. But when you get to the Olympics, you're only allowed a marker. You're not actually allowed tape. So I'd have to sneak a little bit of tape and stick it under the marker. So if it was moved, at least the tape was still there.
Yeah. I've got a question here. How do you stay motivated when things are hard? That's from Chan.
You've always got to look at the bigger picture. It is going to be hard. It's never going to be easy. If it was hard, everybody would be doing it, wouldn't they? You know, you always got to look at the bigger picture. You always got to be looking forward at the bigger picture. You know, you've got lots of little ones in the run up to the big one. And the big one is the one that you've got to focus on every time, you know, especially when it gets hard. And the thing is that everybody's in the same boat. It's just a matter of who's going to come out of it better. Everybody's going to find it hard. You know, your competitors are finding it hard. It's just a matter of who's going to, you know, do most of the training, who's going to not do the least of the training, if that makes sense.
A great quote once. Who's going to be the most comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense?
That is so true. That is so true, yeah.
Another question we've got here, and I could relate it to a couple of things. Who was the best athlete you ever saw when you were in competition? Maybe not just in the triple jump, but generally. And who would you say the best athlete ever is?
Ever is? In all of athletics?
Yeah,
or just my...
I'll let you choose.
Oh, wow. Do you know, I met Ed Moses. A lot of you guys probably 400-meter hurdler, the best hurdler in the whole world. I think he was the one who devised I can't remember how many strides it was in between each hurdle, but honestly, I met him, I think, when I was probably about 9 or 10. What an awesome athlete. I mean, I just remember these big strides between the hurdles. And I think he's the one who actually invented the least amount of strides between each hurdle. I'll have to Google it now. That's going to annoy me. But what an awesome, awesome athlete. I mean, I've seen so many athletes compete and do well. Jan Zalesny, Steve Backley, Paula Radcliffe, Kelly Holmes. You know, I used to share a room with Kelly Holmes every now and again when we competed on the Grand Prix circuit. And, you know, that she's brilliant. Dame Kelly Holmes, should I say, not Kelly Holmes. Who else? God, Catherine Merry, most underrated athlete. She came third in Sydney Games. Awesome 400-meter runner. Yeah, also my good friend.
And would you say all those athletes you just mentioned all had the same sort of traits in them mentally and about how they approach the training, or were they all very different from what you saw?
I would say probably Paula was tough athlete, completely different athlete to I'd ever seen. I mean, this lady used to run 100 miles plus per week. Per week. Ridiculous. Jan Zalesny, I watched him. He was a javelin thrower. Google him. My God, this guy was absolutely awesome. He would literally just throw and throw and throw and throw. And you're thinking, when is this guy going to stop? He was an awesome athlete. Steve Backley, the same. Just throwing. You're thinking, when are these guys going to stop? But then people watch me jump and just keep on going and probably thought, when's she going to stop, kind of thing. So I think we all had the same sort of mentality. You just keep going until you drop, basically. Yeah.
I've just had a message. Ed Moses, 13 strides. Everyone else, 15 strides.
Thank you.
Sahota. Just try. I'm going to close up in a minute, unless anyone else has got questions. If you want to send them through, what general advice would you give to kids who want to get into the elite level of sport, or even make it to the Olympic Games?
Have a go at everything. Don't have a go just and stay at one specific sport, because for me, I feel that for every sport that you try will always help you understand your body better, will understand. So say I wanted to do triple jump. I didn't just do triple jump. I used to be a high jumper. I did long jump too. Long jump was my event, or as I thought, before the triple jump. I sprinted. So I used to sprint against, the best sprinters in this country, in Great Britain. I used to love it because I wasn't a million miles away from them. So for me, it was a great challenge to have a go. Have a go at everything, not just your sport. I mean, I swam as well. So, I was all right. I wasn't brilliant, but I was all right. Turn your hand at everything. It's like CrossFit. It helps for the sport that you actually choose, for the choices that you make eventually. Every sport that you do, every sport that you have a go at is actually going to help you with the sport that you eventually choose. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, because you see more players in each sport now being more of an all-round athlete. Like, for example, in hockey now, it's not just about being good at hockey. You've got to be like you said, a sprinter. You've got to be an endurance runner. You've got to be someone who can lift weights and get the muscle fibers working. And so you've got to look at what else you can do. Maybe a game of badminton, because you'll get your foot work getting better, things like that. So it is so important that you do try the things rather than just your
Don't specialise too early. It's always going to be there. It's not going to go anywhere. And besides which, you might actually change your mind and decide, not that sport, but I want to do this sport because I'm actually really good at this one as well. And I mean, that's what heptathletes are as well. They can turn their hand at javelin, hurdles, sprinting, even 800-meter running, high jump, and that's come from them having a go at all different sports, not just focusing on one particular sport.
And what do you think we need to do to get more kids involved in sport?
I think we need to start early. I think.
So when you say early, what kind of age?
8 and 9.
8 and 9.
Yeah, 8 or 9. I think anything. I mean, it's okay to do sort of body weight type of stuff and running and making it fun. But I think too many people want to specialize way too early, and at sort of 8, 9 years old, it's good to have fun and try lots of different things. I mean, I've got 2 children, one's 10 and the other one's 9. They both swim, they do gymnastics, they do cheerleading as well. But they're both very good at swimming, but I'm not willing to just let them just focus solely on swimming. I want them to, you know, do all the other things. And if there isn't really a club where we are for athletics, but I would love them to have a go at athletics as well, you know, just so maybe, you know, swimming might not be what they want to do, gymnastics might not be what they want to do, but I think it's important for them to do something, you know, and have a go at something. If they want to do some other things, I always go, okay, well, let's see if we could try and squeeze that one in. You know, it is important for them to have a go. And, you know, they've been swimming for, 3 years now, and they swim competitively, you know, but it's not something that I necessarily want them to focus on either. I still want them to have a go at other sports, because it is important to keep your hand in other sports. And eventually, if they make the choice to swim, then that's brilliant. If they don't, then that's fine too. Yeah.
So is your message to them just enjoy it for now?
Enjoy it. You know, you're way too young to be, you know, unless you're a gymnast, that's a different ball game, you know, or to some degree a swimmer. You have to make that choice a little bit earlier, because it is that type of sport where you're only in it for a very, very short period of time, and you have to be fairly young. But anything else, you know, I think you can carry on well into your 30s, and making a decision, you know, at 16, 17, 18, sometimes I think is probably too young for someone to just solely focus on one particular sport. Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I didn't make any decisions until I was well into my 20s, probably about 24, before I really decided, okay, athletics is where I want to go. And I think it's long jump, but I'm still not 100% sure, you know.
From the outside, that seems like, I'm not saying you're old, but it seems quite old in terms of picking a sport.
Yeah, but I mean,
the Olympics.
Yeah, but I went to the Olympics.
Yeah.
I've been to every single major championships. I even managed to break the world indoor record. So, you know, starting out that late is I think if you start out later, you tend to last a lot longer, personally. I mean, look at all the athletes that have started late. They literally are in the sport until they're in their late 30s, mid to late 30s, which is, it's a good thing, I think, rather than finishing in your 20s and then, you know, sort of having to, I suppose, leave the sport and do something else.
And I think it's also a question for the people who govern a particular sport, because if, you know, we have the discussion in hockey at the moment about there being a particular pathway for people to get into, say, the Olympic squad. And if you don't make it by the time you're an under 18 athlete or under 21, it's very unlikely you're then going to get into that GB squad like in your mid 20s. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you peaked or you were at that level in your early 20s. You could get there in your mid 20s, and you
will get, I think, if you persevere, because it's not a 4-year thing. And I think that's where a lot of people don't acknowledge that going to the Olympics didn't take 4 years. It probably takes 8 to 12 years to get into the Olympics, unless you are really, really talented. And I would say it took me longer than 8 years to get to Atlanta. I'd been training many years prior to that, before I even knew that I wanted to go to the Olympics. You know, and I think that's where a lot of people make the mistake, is that they think, oh, if I train for 4 years, I'll make it into the Olympics. But it's not. It takes a minimum of 8 years to get into the next Olympics.
And do you think Sport England is doing enough for inner city kids, and what more could they do you think?
I mean, I'm not sure what sort of Sport England do now, because I've kind of left the sport behind a little bit, so I'm not kind of sure what goes on. There's always more that you know, a governing body can do. There's always more of a recruitment drive they can do. So they can send, I mean, I know they already send sort of athletes into schools to try and help promote the sport, but they could do, there's always more that they could do to try and get more people into sport. And I don't think, they need to start younger. I've always said, by the time you sort of get to 13, 14, if you're not already in sport, it's highly unlikely that you're going to come into sport at that age. It's very, very difficult because you've already got lots of things going on outside of sport. So why would you then give up your time? Because it takes a lot of time and energy and effort to do sport. I mean, I'm old now and I still find it hard to try and squeeze in some training. But I do, because I do actually love what I do. Even though I'm not triple jumping anymore, I still enjoy training, you know. But yeah, there's always more people can do to get more children involved in sport. But I think the later they leave it, the harder it is for youngsters to come into sport. Because as I said, you've always got some, you know, kids sort of, even my kids have still got stuff to do outside of their sports. But, you know, because they started early, it's easier to keep them involved in the sports, that they do.
Actually, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Unless anyone else has got any questions, fire them over now, literally, like now. I'd just like to ask, have you got any other sort of final general advice or final thoughts before we close it today?
Oh my goodness. Keep at it. Just keep going. Persevere. Don't let anybody tell you you're not good enough. Only you know whether you're good enough. I've had people tell me that I'm not good enough and I shouldn't be doing this because it won't be this. So I've had people tell me, oh, don't do the triple jump because triple jump will never be an Olympic sport. And hey ho, you know, it was an Olympic sport. And because I loved what I was doing and I enjoyed what I was doing and I was good at what I was doing. So I carried on, never mind what anybody else said. Don't let people try and put you off, because there will always be people that will try and put you off your sports, either out of jealousy or they just can't see the talent that you have in yourself. But just keep believing in yourself and just keep going.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're welcome. No, the pleasure's all mine. I loved it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.